Welcome back to Fuel Up Classic. Now, I thought it was time I gave you a little bit of an update on some of the project cars that I've featured on the channel. Now, what better way to start than with the 1966 MGB GT? I told you at the start of my last video with this car, it's certainly not a great example, but I was keen to do something with it. Well, I'm really pleased to say, for the very first time, I can now take this car out for a drive and bring you guys along for the journey as well. I'll talk you through what we've done so far with it, and also a frustratingly simple reason why I just couldn't get this car to run properly. And it should act as a bit of a warning, not just for any classic car owners out there, for anyone who owns a car, because I've never come across it before, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. But I'm really excited to say, let's take the MGB GT out for a drive. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. It makes all the difference. And as usual, a huge thank you to each and every one of you who've already subscribed, commented, and liked my other classic car videos. Without repeating myself too much, I did a previous video on this car a few months ago where I introduced it to the channel just after I'd bought it. So if you'd like to take a closer look around the MGB GT, check out that video first, then come back to this one and you can see how things have developed so much. And also in that first video, I definitely highlight some of this car's worst points. And there are many things to talk about with this car that are sort of not particularly great. But within that first video, I did manage with quite a bit of effort to get it to coax into life. It did run for a brief period, albeit not that well. So that's where we left things. And I listened to all of your comments, and I had my own suspicions as well about what might be causing the awful misfire on this MGB. So a week or so later, I visited the MG Owners Club spares department, and I bought bags and bags of parts for this car. And I mean just general service items that I would expect to replace anyway on a car that we think hadn't been used for at least a decade. But in actual fact, what solved the running problem with this car was much simpler, but that didn't make it any less frustrating to try and diagnose. So join me, let's take this car out for a drive. I'm so happy to say that. It feels like a milestone achievement that we've managed to get this car even up and running and be able to drive it a short distance anyway. Let's go and do exactly that, and I'll tell you what went wrong and how we fixed it. So here we have it. My MGB GT is out on the road for the first time in probably a decade. And if you've never driven an MGB, I highly encourage you to do so. They're great fun. They really are just so well supported, and they're just good fun sports cars that you can still pick up for not a lot of money. I'm really quite fond of this car. But let me tell you about the problems I had with it, because I know I've eked that out a little bit too long in this video. And to cut it very short and make it very simple, it was a batch of dodgy fuel from my local petrol station. All that head scratching, buying all those parts and that kind of thing to just try and see what was going on with this car, which I don't regret buying the parts. I quite like buying bits for classic cars, and I don't need much of an excuse to do it. But the most frustrating thing was it was literally just a batch of dodgy fuel, E5 unleaded, from my local petrol station. And I only found out when a week or two later, I tried to get my lawnmower going one Sunday afternoon and it wouldn't run. So I got the strimmer out the garage, put the same fuel in, and it wouldn't run. And then you start to join the dots together, and I realized the fuel that I had bought from my local BP petrol station, there was something wrong with it, and that's what was causing that horrendous misfire on this car. So I drained the fuel, I put 3 or 4 gallons of fresh E5 from another petrol station in the car, and almost immediately the misfire had gone. It really was that simple. And I can laugh about it now, but I can tell you at the time I was deeply frustrated by it, and it is a warning for anyone that owns any car that this can happen. It shouldn't happen, but it can happen. And now I know I'll be very, very clued up if it ever happened to me again, because I just wouldn't have put two and two together otherwise. But the MGB GT itself, just getting behind the wheel of it is so good to drive. This is a ropey, fairly tatty example, and it's worth noting, although I could, because of the age of this car, have just got in it and driven it down the road as long as it was insured. Let's not forget this car is exempt from an MOT and exempt from road tax, but I did have the car checked over by my trusted mechanic before I drove it anywhere. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't actually driving a death trap. And actually, to my surprise, yes, there are some things to be done, but the car was given a relatively clean bill of health. So I have been using the car. I've been taking it on short journeys, and I'm really lucky that I get to drive quite a lot of cars with what I do for a job. And I still find myself jumping in the old MGB whenever I can. If it's just a local trip, I'm going to the shops, or I'm going here, there and everywhere, going out for dinner, we take the MGB. It's just a fun car. So there you have it. It brings on the next question of, what am I going to do with this car? And I still don't really know that. We've managed to get it running after that whole fuel debacle. I've bought a load of parts for it that I haven't yet needed to use, but I probably should. And I can't help but think that maybe a lovely road trip with this car would be good fun. I don't know where I'd go with it. I don't even know. It's just an idea that came to me. The alternative is, and it's largely up to you guys as well, I always want to bring you guys along for the journey on this channel. It's all about the classic car ownership and the highs and the lows. But I could just sell it. I've got it up and running, and it could make a good little car for somebody to take to the next level, because I am incredibly keen on this not becoming a full restoration project, and I am aware that it very easily could become that. So do I just sell it on and let someone have their fun with it and they can use it and improve it to the next level? Or if you'd like to see more content on this car, well, we'll do more with it. Let me know in the comments below. But we've passed the first milestone with this, and I'm really, really pleased to say that I can get out and enjoy this car. And as I said in the start, just if you've never driven an MGB, go out and drive one, because they are an iconic British classic car. They're still obtainable for a very small sum, although early cars and very, very good cars are quite expensive now. You can still get in one that's very usable for not a huge amount of money. So go out and drive one and see what you think. So there you have it. I think I might have got lucky with this MGB GT, despite that frustrating fuel issue. But I'm not denying by any means that there's a lot to do on this car. And if you started to get into a full-blown restoration, well, the numbers and the hours that would be required for it would just really blow the budget. It wouldn't be worth doing. But let me know what you think I should do with this car. And it brings me neatly on, really, to talk about some of the other projects that I've introduced on the channel in the last few months. And we'll start things off with, for balance, because I think this one has gone rather well so far, with my trusty old Land Rover Discovery that I really haven't featured on the channel for a long, long time. I mentioned after having probably 14 Land Rovers of all different types, I was really quite impressed with my old Discovery, and could we turn it into a bit of an expedition overland budget build? Well, things started with that car. I started to investigate how things are, how it is structurally, and it might come as no surprise that the rust has really got the better of that car. It's the biggest Achilles heel with a Discovery of that era, and I'm not joking when I say that the rot really has set in on every single aspect of the car. And I mean the boot floor, the sills, the inner wings, the chassis as well, to name but a few. So I really don't know whether that is a project that I will be continuing. It's sat on my driveway at the moment looking in a very sorry state. But I will try to see if I can dedicate the time and of course the finances to see what we can do with that car. But in the meantime, I've bought a Toyota Hilux to replace it, and that's sort of serving all the jobs really well. It's our car every day, we can chuck the dogs in it, and also, of course, that could be built upon as an expedition vehicle for some later road trips across Europe and further afield. And that brings me neatly on to my Jaguar XJ project, a car I picked up for just £500, and that was really cheap for one of those. But it had a very, very short MOT, it had quite a lot of damage on it, it had a number of things that didn't work as well. But I've got some really good updates on that car. You all seemed really interested in the cheap old Jag XJ, and I am going to save that car. I've got some positive news on it. I'm going to do a proper update in the next few weeks where you'll get to see the car, how it is now. I'll talk you through what that journey has been so far. There's still a lot more to do. But I am pleased to say that we should be saving that car from the scrap heap, and that is overwhelmingly what you all at home suggested I should do with it. So there you have it. There's a very quick roundup of the other cars on the channel. Obviously the focus of this video was much more on the old 1966 MGB GT. I'm so pleased that you guys could come out for the first proper drive on this channel of the car. But if you haven't subscribed already, please do. It makes a huge difference. And we'll see what the next video brings. I've got some great classic cars lined up to feature on the channel, and I hope you're all enjoying them and you continue to enjoy the videos in the future as well.